Do you know that feeling where you want to talk to somebody but something is just holding you back? You might be scared what other people think of you, you might say something stupid and you start overthinking. But did you know that it's incredibly easy to fix this? In this video I'm going to teach you 4 incredibly easy steps you can take to talk to anyone without feeling awkward at all. And trust me, if you can stick with me for a couple of minutes, these tricks can help you for the rest of your life. Step 1 to start a conversation is give somebody a genuine compliment. For example, you go to somebody and say that you really like their outfit. Now 99% of people will act surprised and say, "Oh, thank you." Now just remember, if you manage to approach somebody, you've already conquered 99% of the conversation. Because conversations are not really that difficult, we just make them incredibly scary in our heads. And if you approach somebody and you say that you generally like their outfit, you've beaten 99% of the conversation. Now as soon as he or she replied with, "Oh, thank you," you should continue with a simple follow-up questions like, "Where did you buy it?" And in most cases, people will give you a complete story of how and where they bought their clothes. And if you get to this point, you're in a sweet spot because people are just talking to you. Now you can prepare this compliment and the follow-up questions before the conversation if this is difficult for you, but at some point it's going to get natural. However, if you struggle with this, it's completely fine if you prepare this in advance. Wait, but before we continue though, I created a document you can download completely for free in the description, which contains some actionable steps you can use during a conversation for people to get to like you. They work incredibly well, so make sure to grab it completely for free in the description. Now step 1 was awesome, but step 2 is honestly where the magic happens. Because often during a conversation we tend to talk about ourselves instead of listening to others, which is actually the killer for a conversation. Because here's the secret that you have to remember: most people like to talk about themselves, not listening to others that are talking about themselves. So instead of telling your own story, be genuinely interested in their story. And don't just act like you're interested, actually be interested. Listen to what they're telling you and also make sure to ask questions. When somebody says that they go to the gym often, don't reply with, "Oh, that's cool, I go to the gym as well, I train 5 times a week and I always train calisthenics," and don't do that. Instead, reply with something like, "Oh, that's awesome, how often do you go?" So show interest in the other person instead of talking about yourself. Now at some point, if the conversation is flowing, it's really important to move on to step number 3. Because if you've been talking for a couple of minutes, you can ask for the person's name. And if appropriate, always make sure to shake their hand. This is a really small detail, but this helps to connect with the person. Now once they've told you their name, there's something really important that you have to do, which is remember their name. Let's say you're having a conversation with Sebastian, and at the end of the conversation, you both go do your own thing and it's time to say goodbye. Now, what sounds more personal? If you say, "Hey, it was nice to meet you, see you next time," or if you say, "Hey Sebastian, it was nice to meet you, see you next time." Just adding their name is a really minor detail, but this helps so much to build a better connection with the person. So make sure to ask for their name, remember it, and when possible, also say their name. Now all of these 3 steps are awesome and really helps to get into a conversation with somebody. But if you do not use step 4, some people will actually start to dislike you during a conversation. Let me explain. In most cases, if you judge, criticize, and complain a lot during a conversation, people will not like you, especially if this criticism or judgments are directed to them. It's incredibly important to keep a conversation positive, especially with a stranger. If not necessary, do not talk about anything negatively, only focus on the positive. The first rule is never judge or criticize the person you're talking to. Even if you sometimes might not agree with their opinion or viewpoints, never say to them that they're wrong. And that brings me to the second rule, is avoid arguments. Because here's what you have to keep in mind with an argument. Even if you think you won an argument, you actually still lose. Because the other person might say that you're right, but the other person also starts to dislike you. So especially with a stranger, avoid arguments at all costs. Now hold on a second, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't show your boundaries to other people. If somebody is negative towards you or insulting you, you shouldn't be talking to this person in the first place. Not starting an argument and focusing mainly on the positive is especially when you're talking to strangers. So for friends or family, this can be different. But if you do not know somebody yet, I recommend to stay focused on the positive. And again, if this stranger would cross your boundaries, just walk away. Now the final rule is give more and more compliments during the conversation. Giving compliments is of course incredibly positive. So again, if somebody mentions that they go to the gym a lot, you can give a compliment about that, saying, "Hey, that's awesome." Now if you're into self-improvement and want to better your life, you should definitely check out my self-improvement community with the link in the description. We help each other to become the best version of ourselves and achieve our goals, and it's completely for free for the first 7 days. So if you like this kind of stuff, click the first link in the description and I look forward to seeing you in the community.